Again, welcome to the January 26, 2022 Three Village School District Community Forum. We hope that this will be the first of other forums to be held to address salient topics of interest to our families, staff, and community at large. My name is Alan Baum, and I am the Executive Director of Human Resources and Secondary Education, and I have the pleasure of serving as this evening's facilitator. I want to take a moment to recognize and thank our Board of Education for their advocacy and support of the forum, and to the district administrators present this evening. I would also like to recognize the efforts of Deidre Rubenstrunk, Director of Instructional Technology, and Laura Pimentel, Assistant to the Superintendent and CIO, for their efforts and expertise for creating the community questionnaire link and helping to categorize and organize the questions submitted. And thanks to Gary Young and Anthony Cooper for helping to ensure our technology is working smoothly. And thank you to Wirely Sound for the streaming and microphones. Before I introduce this evening's panelists, I would like to explain the structure of tonight's forum. All the questions that will be answered this evening have been submitted in advance and have been categorized in various categories to include health and safety, curriculum and instruction, social emotional learning and health and mental health support, special education, diversity, equity, and inclusion, sports and other extracurricular activities, transportation, finance and budget, child nutrition, facilities, and other. As some of the questions submitted were similar and/or duplicative in nature, the questions were combined to reduce redundancy. In addition, some questions were specific to an individual or family situation and were directed to and have already been addressed by a member of the leadership team. Although this evening's panelists will not be taking questions from the floor, you are always welcome to reach out to them or any member of our leadership team should you have any questions or topics that you would wish to discuss. Before I introduce this evening's panelists, although I suspect they are known to you, I would like to address one of the questions raised myself. Why is this not a true forum? The definition of a forum is as follows. This is a question coming from the community member. The definition of a forum is as follows. A place, meeting, or medium where ideas and views on a particular issue can be exchanged. 2, a public meeting place for open discussion. This is not an open discussion, therefore this is not a forum. Why do questions need to be submitted beforehand? Why can they not be answered on the spot as they are presented? As this is a two-part question, I will address the first part of the question first. That is certainly one definition, and albeit the most common definition of a forum. While the structure of this evening's forum is not an interactive in-person exchange, tonight's forum is a public meeting in which the district has requested feedback, questions, and concerns on issues of importance and commonality. While audience participation is most typical of a forum, it is not necessarily a requirement. This is the format that was decided for this event. As this is the first forum, we are open to varying structures for a future forum. With regard to the second question, of course questions can be addressed on the spot. However, there are numerous benefits for both community members and panelists to have questions submitted in advance. Primarily, it provides an opportunity for the panelists to make certain that their responses are accurate, comprehensive, and detailed. There are times when questions may be asked about a particular topic in which details are not readily available or known, resulting in a response such as, "We'll have to look into your inquiry and get back to you." Having questions in advance precludes the delay in providing information. In addition, having the question ahead of time allows for similar questions to be consolidated, eliminating redundancy, and lastly, specific questions about children and needs can be vetted and given to appropriate staff to address. And now I would like to introduce this evening's panelists. Cheryl Pedicic, Superintendent of Schools, Jeff Carlson, Deputy Superintendent, Gary Dabrowski, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Kevin Scanlon, Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services. Dawn Mason, Executive Director of Pupil Personnel Services. Erin Connolly, Executive Director of Student and Community Services. And Paul Gold, Director of Social Studies and Warren Melville High School Assistant Principal. I will now move to the first category for this evening, finance and budget. I will read the questions as submitted, and then I will direct it to one of the panelists. Again, the topic is finance and budget. Has any thought been put into not splitting NAS? I'm trying to read this verbatim. NAS, assuming NASAKEG, and having them go to either Jolinas or Murphy since enrollment is down. I'll pass this question on to Cheryl.
Thank you, Alan. This has been a topic that has been reviewed and discussed for many years. We recognize and understand the concerns associated with the fact that one of our 5 elementary schools is split, causing the majority of students who have been together for the past 7 years to attend one of our junior high schools, either Jolinas or Murphy, just based on the fact of where their location of their home is. We have studied the impact of splitting other of our elementary schools, and unfortunately, it has resulted in pretty much the same results, which is that a portion of the students would have to go to either Jolinas or Murphy. We've also thought about, is it possible for, let's say, all of NASAKEG students to go to Jolinas or Murphy, and unfortunately, that is really not possible. The splitting of NASAKEG has actually enabled the district to balance the enrollment of our junior high schools, which currently has an enrollment of 690 students at Jolinas and 699 students at Murphy. Parents can also elect to send their children to either junior high school, provided that they put transportation into place on their own. And we have equal numbers of parents requesting attendance in a different school other than the school to which they are assigned.
Thank you. In May of 2013, the Board of Education, which 4 current members were a part of, as well as our current superintendent, signed a resolution against high-stakes testing after concerns by parents were heard. At the time, administering these week-long tests was costing the district $1 million. What is it costing us today? Why are we still administering these tests? Prior to this type of testing, children were evaluated in other ways for any services needed, etc., that didn't require $1 million. New York State also threatened districts where students refused and opted out that they would lose funding. Has any funding ever been withheld from the district as a result of children refusing to take the tests? Have the students who refused been at a disadvantage in any way? Cheryl?
Yes, this is a multi-level question, so therefore I'm going to break it up into segments. Yes, that is correct. On May 14th, 2013, the Board of Education did adopt a resolution against high-stakes testing, which in sum and substance read the following. Resolved that the Three Village Central School District calls on Governor Cuomo, Commissioner King, the state legislator, and the Board of Regents to re-examine public school accountability systems in the state, including the Annual Professional Performance Review, APPR, and to develop a system based on multiple forms of assessment, which does not require extensive standardized testing, more accurately reflects the broad range of student learning, and is used to support students and improve schools. And resolved that the Three Village Central School District calls on the U.S. Congress and administration to overhaul the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which at the time was currently known as the No Child Left Behind Act, reduce the testing mandates, promote multiple forms of evidence of student learning and school quality and accountability, and not mandate any fixed role for the use of student test scores in evaluating educators. The district also issued another letter addressed to parents on November 4th of 2016, which continued to express strong advocacy for the professional organizations and with our local and state legislators for the creation of a new evaluation system that would appropriately and fairly measure teacher contributions to student learning, as we viewed that then 3012D of the APPR regulations to unfairly evaluate our teachers and principals and all but eliminate local control on staff performance reviews. Since that time, significant changes to the annual professional performance review process and high-stakes testing has definitely taken place. And what occurred in 2016 was a decreased number of test questions, the untimed testing, increased the number of New York State teachers involved in creating and reviewing the assessments, and expanded opportunities for teachers to be involved in total test development. And a new test vendor was also created, which at the time was Questar. The district is currently spending approximately $50,000, which is a significantly less amount of money than when this process initially started in 2013. The district is required to administer these assessments, and we do believe that the assessment should integrate grading, learning, and motivation for our students. As we know, well-designed assessment methods have the potential to provide valuable information about student learning. They tell us what students learned, how well they learned it, and where they struggled. We have learned that the assessment process helps students develop critical thinking skills and analyzing skills. Those skills will enhance their ability to learn, adapt, and grow in the future classrooms, as well as in the career and life settings. If students do not take the assessment, then we simply would not have that data to evaluate and use that as part of an assessment. And so in summary, we do believe that well-designed designed assessments can have great value and impact on student learning.
Has any thought been put into closing one of the elementary schools since enrollment is down and students could easily fit into other buildings? Kevin?
That plan for looking at that as a district will be something that the board may consider in the future, but not at the present time.
What is Mestrack? Why are we paying salaries to them, and are they paying rent for the building they are using? Jeff?
Mestrack is the Mideast Suffolk Teacher Center. It's funded by a grant from the New York State Education Department. They're using our Nichols Road building. That's really to our benefit. It benefits our teachers in staff development. Other teachers from other districts, if they come to programs, they have to travel a lot further, and in many cases need to have class coverage arranged because of the distance. Our teachers are able to attend classes there. It doesn't cost us anything. We don't need to provide class coverage. So it's really to our benefit. We are the conduit for the grant. The money comes to us from the State Education Department, and we pay it out. So there's no local tax money going towards any of the expenses. And I would also just like to point out, if anybody, there's only 2 people that work for the for Mestrack that are paid through the grant, and they're employees of the district for as long as they work there, but would not be on our retirement rolls should they retire from that position. So there would not be any kind of legacy cost for that. That was part of the original deal, that there would be no cost to the local taxpayer for the operation of the teacher center or upon retirement of anyone that worked there.
Thank you. How much money has been received and dispersed to the district in pandemic aid since 2020? What is the amount per student? What did the district commit to do or not to do in order to receive this money? And please provide a breakdown of amounts received and how it was spent. And before I'm going to give this to Jeff, I just want to remind everybody here in the audience and listening at home that these questions were grouped together by category, so they're not necessarily all from a particular individual.
There were a couple of different methods that we received money related to the pandemic. One of them that we spoke about kind of at length during this last budget season was the American Rescue Plan money. That is approximately $1,257,000. Some of you may remember a presentation that Mrs. Connolly did at a board meeting in, I think it was June of last year, regarding how that money would be spent. Most of that, about 80% of it, is for additional COVID and instructional staff that we hired in order to keep schools open last year. Remember, no one else said schools open every day, but we did. That money went towards that. That was about 80% of that 1.257 million. The rest of that money was for additional social worker staff, some programs related to our ENL, some additional services for ENL kids. That was the $1,257,000. That's American Rescue Plan. There was another piece kind of along with that. That was the CARES Act Part 2, which is from the federal government, of a little over $559,000, and that was to purchase Chromebooks. There was money given to us during the 2021 school year that was from the CARES Act, that was made up of two parts that totaled $190,848. I would categorize that money separately because what often happens, and in this case exactly happened, was the federal government gave us that $190,848. So what New York State did was they decreased our state aid by $190,848 and called it pandemic adjustment. So the dollar for dollar, what the federal government gave us, the state took away. So it was pandemic money from the federal government, but it wasn't any additional money. But that money too went for Chromebooks that we needed for last year. And it comes out to, not counting that $190,000 because it wasn't additional money that we got. The other money, the American Rescue Plan money and the CARES Act 2 ESSER money, comes out to about $321 per student.
Thank you. Can you please compare expenditures and staffing levels, preferably in a grid spreadsheet format, across all departments, schools in 2021 with approximately 5,500 students, 2012 with approximately 7,000 students, 2006 with approximately 8,000 students? Jeff?
So the question that was asked went on to ask for those breakdowns among all different categories of expenditures. This is not really the venue or the forum to go over numbers like that in so much detail, just me telling you the numbers. But a lot of that information is what we're working with. We have a budget advisory committee, a lot of similar type information, and we will be putting all of that up on our website, especially as we get a little further along in the budget process. However, to give a little information on this, so to take the 3 years that were in the question, the 2006-07 school year, our budget was about $145 million. Our enrollment was 7,949, and we had, if we count instructional staff, which includes all classroom teachers, all the special teachers, art, music, phys ed, all our social workers, speech pathologists, psychologists, all of our instructional staff in what we call full-time equivalents. In that year, with the 7,949 students, we had 638 full-time equivalent instructional staff. Then the next year that was asked about, the 12-13 school year, we had dropped down to 7,307 students, and that 638 instructional staff had dropped down to 591. By the way, I would like to just add in, after the 591 in 12-13, it went down further again. We reduced staff even more to 545 the following year. But the year that was in the question was 12-13. So the budget that year was a little over $177 million. And then in the current year, our current enrollment is 5,651. That was, I think, last week's actual number. Mm-hmm. And that with the full-time instructional staff, In 12-13 was 591. We're at 589 right now. Almost the same. We do have a few COVID instructional positions in place now, so without those, it would be a little less. So even though we have fewer students than we had in 12-13 and almost the same instructional staff, what we had done is, as I mentioned, in the 13-14 year, that number had dropped to 545 instructional staff, and we've been building that up since. And that was a lot of our budget discussions over the years. We've reduced class size. We've increased tremendously the number of electives that we offer, and we've also increased our other services, social work, psychologists. Every school district has social workers and psychologists. We have more than most. We do a lot of work with our students in that, and that's been a big part of why we've worked hard to build those numbers back up in staffing.
Thank you. That concludes the finance and budget topics. We're moving on to curriculum and instruction. The first question, does the district plan to do remote learning? And if so, what determines if the district will go remote? Cheryl?
Yes, thank you. At this time, the district is not planning to provide a remote instructional model. During the recent Omicron surge, given the high infection rates, the district did offer live streaming at the secondary level and also tutoring opportunities at the elementary level. The decision to pivot to a remote instructional model would actually be based on a confluence of factors. Most importantly, the district infection rates, as well as staff capabilities. As you know, there were school districts across Long Island that actually had to pivot to a remote instructional model because they didn't have enough staff to cover. Fortunately, in our district, that was not the case. And this decision, of course, would be made in careful consultation with the Board of Education, with our administration, and the Department of Health. As I've stated in the past, we view our schools to be the central pillar to the infrastructure of our community. And as such, schools are critical. They are essential to student learning, social and emotional and psychological growth. And so we feel very, very strongly about the importance of in-person learning, and we'll do everything we can to keep our schools open, healthy, and safe.
Where does the school get funding from for your diversity, equity, inclusion, instruction surveys, and salaries? Cheryl?
Sure. The surveys that are created by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee have been done by staff inside our school district, members of the DEI subcommittee. There has been no remuneration for any of the committee members that serve on this subcommittee in the development of the survey. One of our psychologists is an expert in this area and has been very helpful, and there has been no compensation for his services. We do utilize Qualtrics, which is a web-based software program, very sophisticated with regard to developing surveys. And we have worked with representatives from Qualtrics who are experts that have helped us, and they have been, the contract with Qualtrics and those representatives has been paid for by district funding. We've also used Qualtrics when we did our school reopening survey, as well as the recent digital equity survey.
In a press conference on May 6, 2020, Governor Cuomo announced areas and ideas to build back better and states as we move forward, another area to be reimagined is education. He talks about remote learning. He goes on to say, we went to Bill Gates and he is going to work with us on reimagining the education system. The slide he presented said, the state is working with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to convene experts and develop a blueprint to reimagine education. I think the majority of us, if not all, will agree that our children learn best in person, and decisions to give them a better education should be left to educators and kept at a local level. We do not want our children's education to be remote learning or influenced and controlled by politicians and non-educators such as Bill Gates, who are only involved to make a profit. What involvement do you have as educators and administrators in providing input on the reimaging that is being done? If none, you need to assert yourself and ensure that you are actively involved and have a voice about what is happening. Our children deserve the best local education we can give. Cheryl, give that one to you too.
Okay, thank you. We agree that our students, as I've stated in the past, learn best when they are in person. Since Governor Hochul has taken office on August 24th of 2021, to our knowledge, there has been no discussion regarding reimagined education and a collaborative effort with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. In fact, Governor Kathy Hochul has been emphatic in her mission to keep schools open. In late December, she stated, "We believe that it's critically important that our children not end up in that same situation that they were for so many months, when they were so displaced from their normal environment." Additionally, her efforts in combination with SED and DOH have been very clearly noted in the 2 million test kits that have been distributed to schools as an added strategy to keep students in school and healthy and safe.
What are this year's enrollment numbers compared to last year? Cheryl?
Yes, at this time last year, the K through 12 enrollment was 5,647 students. The elementary enrollment was 2,637. Junior high school enrollment was 1,435. High school enrollment was 1,530. And the academy enrollment was 45 students. Academy houses students in grades 9 through 12. This year, as Mr. Carlson has stated, our enrollment is 5,651 students currently. Elementary enrollment is 2,742 students. Junior high school enrollment is 1,389 students. High school enrollment is 1,469 students. And our academy enrollment is 51 students. Please note that these numbers do not include our pre-K enrollment, which generally ranges anywhere from 180 students district-wide to 200 students. As you will know from the numbers that I've just shared with you, our elementary enrollment, which for many years was trending downward, has now begun to gradually increase. This year we have an increase of 105 elementary school students over last year. And this can be largely attributed to the housing market, and we believe to the effects of the pandemic, with many families moving out from the city into the suburbs. At the junior high school, there is a slight decline of 46 students, which will likely continue for the next several years as the class sizes then begin to plateau. This was the case that we saw at our elementary level. And the enrollment at the high school did show a decline of 61 students, but is projected to be fairly level for next year.
At our last PTO meeting, when the state assessments were discussed, several parents asked that I share that they would like to hear from you why they should allow their children to take the exams. They would like to know what negative impacts opting out might have on their children or their school/district, and what benefits there are to having their children start taking the assessments. Thank you. Kevin?
The New York State Education Department requires districts to meet a 95% participation rate on state assessments in regions. If a district fails to meet that mark, the district must file an improvement plan for each of the schools in the subcategories for which they did not meet the 95% threshold. The parents of students who take the state assessments are provided with information which compares their child's performance to students throughout the state. The assessment data cannot be currently used for placement purposes. However, it can provide valuable information on a student so that appropriate services can be offered. In addition, students who are exposed to assessment testing become acclimated to the duration, style, and type of questions that they will experience on assessments as they advance in their education. It is important to note that the new assessments in regions are written by New York State teachers.
How can we lessen the overassignment of homework, especially busy work, overall? Kids are overburdened and it's diminishing returns. Overassigning homework decreases the chance the kids can refresh, do extra activities, get to sleep at a reasonable hour, and take care of the physical and mental health. We are not achieving beyond schools that assign less. Kevin?
Although there are studies and individuals who rely heavily on those studies regarding the detrimental impact of homework, it is important to understand that the demographics of the communities that those studies are referring. Several of the studies are referring to communities with high poverty levels and a large number of single-parent households. Three Village has a current poverty level of 10%. Homework should not be busy work. It serves a constructive purpose as both a review and a preparation. The type of homework given should vary with the topic and the goals of the lessons. Unfortunately, the absence of homework may not prevent some of the issues associated with sleep patterns and overcommitment of students to activities. Without seeing the comparative data mentioned, we cannot comment on achievement levels.
Many districts provide curriculum guidelines and learning goals at the beginning of the school year. Can Three Village do the same? Kevin?
We already have this in place. The elementary level has the Essential Learning posted to the district website. Each of the secondary teachers distributes a course syllabus in either a digital or hard copy format. Both of these outline the curriculum and goals throughout the school year.
What are the district's main goals for the next academic year? Kevin?
The Board of Education establishes goals for the school year in a number of areas. The goals for the academic year for this year are: building administration of each school will develop targets for raising achievement of all students. Targets will align with college and career readiness without emphasis on high-stakes testing. Assess successful and effective implementation of programs and activities. Provide data-driven evidence supported by anecdotal reports and student surveys. Align curriculum with the next generation learning standards. Provide requisite resources and ongoing training to all instructional staff. Continue revision of the science standards at the elementary level to align with the next generation learning standards. Foster the distribution of equitable resources and provision of similar opportunities across all schools. Maintain professional development for teachers and technology-based support programs for students and families in the event that COVID restrictions require implementation of a remote learning model of instruction, which aligns with New York State educational standards and district curriculum for pre-K through 12 in all academic levels and subjects. Assess student learning gaps and monitor and provide social and emotional learning needs, in particular with regard to COVID-19.
Are there any new academic programs or initiatives that the administration is planning for next year? Kevin?
We have proposed several new courses or revisions to existing courses for next year. Those were approved at the Board of Education meeting on November 17, 2021, as they are each year. One of the highlights is the marketing course that has been approved by the New York State Education Department for CTE credit. Additionally, we are examining the possible return of STEM in the elementary level. The Program Review Committee reviews all programs each year in both levels. The Curriculum Development Committee reviews all new courses or changes to existing courses.
Any thoughts on bringing back enrichment programs to the elementary schools? When will the STEM program be reinstated? And will the elementary STEM program be reinstituted in next academic year? Kevin?
This will be presented for consideration during the budget process. We are hoping for at least a partial return of the program.
Does the administration have any data on/keep track of how many students are receiving enrichment or tutoring outside of the district? If not, are they planning to do this in the near future? Kevin?
We would not be able to track that data unless a parent shares it with the district. There is no plan currently to gather this information at this time.
Can assignments be better coordinated, consistent between the parent portal and the Google Classroom? Can assignments' due dates be imported from Classroom to the portal in real time? Different teachers use the platforms with different levels of proficiency or in different ways. Assignments, upcoming quizzes, etc. may not show up in one place or the other place. It would be helpful to have one organized, clear to-do list. Kevin?
We continue to train teachers in the area of use of their resources with Google Classroom. The coordination of assignments at the elementary level is well done since the students remain with the same classroom teacher for the majority of their day. Since secondary students are in a variety of courses at the secondary level, coordination of assignments between teachers would be difficult.
How can we prevent the fear-mongering about teaching race and inclusion from affected beneficial curriculum choices? Paul?
Thank you, Alan. Neither race or inclusion should instill fear in anyone. Our school district does not teach any course, nor does it prescribe to any curriculum that solely identifies race as the impetus for its instruction or methodology. The New York State Education Department outlines our content area curriculum, and particularly in our 7 through 12 social studies curriculum, issues of race and racism are addressed through the lens of history. As the Director of Social Studies for this district, I am confident in stating that our teachers are sensitive to issues of race and racism in this country, presented through the lens of history with historical context, and use these important historical lessons to teach our future global citizens about understanding diversity and inclusion. As important, embracing diversity and inclusion lives in our schools beyond issues of race, but also includes gender, sexuality, physical and intellectual ableism. Our goal, not only as educators, but also as a community at large, should be to teach students what has historically divided us and how those historical differences can be used to teach the next generation that the kindness, compassion, and empathy they show towards humankind can and will make a difference in the world.
Can well-being and whole child approaches be emphasized and taught more than they are now? Paul?
Yes. For as long as the Three Village School District has existed, its teachers, administrators, and support staff have emphasized the importance of not only teaching the New York State Education Department curriculum, but also recognizing and taking responsibility for the health and welfare of the whole child. This philosophy exists in our pre-K through 12 program, and now, more than ever, our entire staff works diligently to reinforce the priorities that exist and are set forth by the Superintendent of Schools and our Board of Education, specifically emphasizing student and staff well-being. These priorities include recognizing the well-being of the whole child, not simply the academic component, but also the social and emotional, as well as the physical safety and well-being of our children. As part of future practice, district leadership will continue to promote our rigorous academic program and continue to promote professional development for staff, the hiring of mental health professionals to support students and staff in need of that support, and the use of relevant and worthwhile programs that focus on preparing all students as the next generation of learners and thinkers.
Thank you. We know the district received funds from the state due to the pandemic. We also know that there were terms to receiving this money. What did the district agree to follow as it pertains to masks and the COVID vaccine specifically? Jeff?
Well, there were, as far as any of the pandemic funds that I spoke about earlier, there were no strings attached to that other than it was for COVID-related purposes. It had nothing to do with vaccines. In fact, most of that money was around before the vaccine even came out. It had nothing to do with vaccines. There was nothing in regard to, well, as long as we have mask mandates, or that had nothing to do with any of that money we received. As with all money that we get from the state or federal government, there is always the potential, if we did not follow what we're supposed to as a school district, as far as the law as established by New York State, which oversees schools in New York, and we have rules and regulations we have to follow. That's always the case, not just regarding masks or anything like that. It could be a school, if there's a number of snow days in a year, and we have to make days up. We have to meet a minimum number of days. There's always the possibility that if a school said, well, we're not going to do that. And so instead of having 180 days of school, we're only going to have 175. There's always the potential that the state can then say, well, we're going to lower your state aid as a result. There was no threats for that. Now, we've seen in the media recently where the governor has said she might reduce state aid to schools that don't follow a mask mandate. But that had nothing to do with any of that money we received. But that's always the case where we have to follow our regulations as established by New York State, directed by the governor and the state education department in running our schools.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the next topic, social and emotional learning and mental health supports. Have you done or seen any studies on the effect of children's learning while wearing masks, and have you done any research on studies relating to the social, emotional development of children that need to social distance in schools? Erin?
Currently, I have not been able to obtain any scientific studies related to the long-term effects of mask wearing or social distancing. This may be because of the newness of this situation. While the effects of COVID feel long for all of us, statistically significant research will most likely not be available for quite some time. I think we all worry about the long-term effects that masks and distancing will have on the development of our children. There are many strategies that we're using in our school district to mitigate these concerns. The implementation in the fall of 2020 of an extensive K-12 social-emotional program was designed to target issues directly related to COVID-19 and the anticipated effects that our mental health professionals identified. You can find an outline of the program on the district website under the reopening plan. Also, in December of 2021, the Social Work Department presented to the Board of Education in detail about the tiered response the PPS department has implemented to support social-emotional learning for our students. This is also available for the community to still watch on the district's YouTube channel. I believe it is also important to acknowledge the role of our parents and families during this crisis. Research tells us that children look to trusted adults about whether or not their world is safe. Our families trusted the safety protocols that our district put into place and allowed their children to come back to in-person learning. These efforts have gone and will continue to go a long way in lessening the long-term effects of COVID on our students' social-emotional well-being.
Students have now been in masks for over a year and a half. Studies have shown that it is affecting their learning and emotional growth. Children cannot live in an emergency forever. The human fight or flight response is not meant to be set in a permanent state. I understand that New York State is setting this rule, but when will districts, including ours, legally take action to end the mask mandate? Erin?
At this time, there is no plans for the district to take legal action against the mask mandate.
What programs are offered for staff? Gary?
Yes, thank you. Wellville schedules monthly programming sessions, both via Google Classroom and in person for each school building. Since September, there have been 54 topics offered. The basis of the majority of the topics resulted from a needs assessment survey sent to all staff. Programs have focused on preventative wellness strategy themes, which pretty much go on each month. Some examples of these themes could include, well, I'll give you the last 3 months. They were live life mindfully, practice gratitude, and embrace a positive mindset. In addition, Wellville offers building visitations for what we refer to as a lunch and learn workshop, focusing on different things such as the power of positive thinking and improving professional and personal relationships. After-school support groups are offered as well. Topics included a parent support group and a cancer support group.
Are they mandatory? If not, what percentage and how many employees total?
Sessions are not mandatory. I will tell you that they are well attended. For example, for the 2020-2021 school year, 54% of the staff have participated in at least one program. For this year so far, over 400 employees have taken advantage of services from Wellville.
What is the process in evaluating workshops, courses, events? I ask as I am involved in a program and it is incredible. Would like an opportunity to have it evaluated and brought into our schools. Gary?
Yes. At the completion of each program offered, and after program evaluation is completed by the participants, the following feedback is typically requested. Questions such as, how likely are you to attend another session? How helpful was the presentation? What can the presenter do differently? And tell us what other topics you were interested in.
Can the approach deal with prevention as much as crisis management? Gary?
Wellville addresses both crisis management and prevention. Crisis management is typically facilitated either on a case-by-case basis, both individually or in a small group, using something such as mediation.
Thank you. Now move on to health and safety. What is your current COVID-19 protocol when someone tests positive? Dawn?
Thank you. Each building implements contact tracing when they learn that a student or staff has tested positive for COVID. Anyone deemed to be closer than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes cumulatively over a 24-hour period is notified of potential exposure so that they can monitor symptoms closely for 10 days. Building administrators reach out to substitutes for their assistance in determining close contacts, but also to inform them if they could be a close contact. Students in the K-12 classroom who are seated 3 or more feet from an infected student are excluded from the definition of close contacts and are not required to quarantine as long as both students correctly and consistently wore well-fitting masks the entire time. This exception does not apply to teachers, staff, or other adults in the indoor classroom setting. Building administrators reach out to those who may have come in contact with someone who has tested positive, including substitute teachers. Per the CDC and DOH guidelines, fully vaccinated individuals who are asymptomatic are not required to quarantine.
I'm curious why children that are vaccinated don't have a shorter period in which they need to be out of school from a contact or if positive. Dawn?
Suffolk County Department of Health recently updated isolation and quarantine guidance for schools that applies to both students and staff. Any asymptomatic students or staff who are fully vaccinated, which is 2 weeks after their last dose, are not required to quarantine after close contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID. They must wear a well-fitting mask around others for 10 days from the date of the last contact. It is recommended that they get tested at least 5 days after the date of last close contact. Boosters are not required for students or staff in the school setting. Extracurricular, after-school, or community activities are not permitted during quarantine, even if fully vaccinated, and testing is not required to end quarantine. If someone tests positive for COVID-19, they are required to isolate for 5 full days, regardless of whether they have symptoms. Day 0 is the first day of symptoms or the date of the first positive test if they have no symptoms. Isolation ends after 5 full days if the individual is fever-free for 24 hours without the use of fever-reducing medications or other symptoms have improved. If fever continues and other symptoms have not improved after 5 days of isolation, the individual should continue to isolate until there is no fever for 24 hours without medication and other symptoms have improved. Testing to end isolation is also not required.
Why aren't we told when students test positive in our children's classrooms? Dawn?
It would be a HIPAA violation to divulge the name of anyone who tests positive for COVID. Anyone who is deemed a close contact through contact tracing will be notified of potential exposure and is advised to follow the protocols of quarantine as per the CDC and the Department of Health.
Why isn't the district providing COVID test kits to substitutes?
Substitutes are not committed to work only in one district and often work in multiple districts. It is the responsibility of each substitute to submit weekly test results in order to work in 3 Village.
Due to the ongoing COVID cases, and since the district has already invested in clear plexiglass desk shields, why are they not being placed back into school? They are clear and should not interfere and will promote the children to have a safe environment around them. Dawn?
CDC removed their recommendations for barriers as a mitigation strategy. The CDC and Department of Health continue to stress the importance of maintaining appropriate space between desks and proper mask wearing. That being said, we do have desk shields available. Any parent who would like their child to use one should reach out to the building principal with their request.
Why are classes still mixing for lunch? Dawn?
Again, space is important here. Students are seated 6 feet apart from each other at lunch.
Do you have any plan to enforce proper mask wearing, ask sick kids with symptoms to stay home, and monitor testing regularly to discover asymptomatic infected kids? Dawn?
At this time, mask guidance remains unchanged. Per existing CDC guidance, all students, staff, and visitors must wear masks indoors regardless of vaccination status. Mask wearing is not required outdoors. Throughout the pandemic, we have asked anyone that does not feel well or exhibit symptoms to stay home.
When will the school district provide educational materials for parents regarding COVID vaccinations for children to help increase overall school safety? Why aren't staff required to be vaccinated? Why aren't students? We require such for so many other diseases that are far less prevalent or deadly. And let's be clear, children are dying right now of COVID. Over 150,000 parents have died. Does the school district plan on implementing a vaccine mandate in September? Dawn?
The New York State Department of Health determines vaccinations for students, not the school district. Vaccination is a personal decision that parents should make in consultation with their child's physician. As far as teachers and other school staff, New York State does require them to be either vaccinated or submit to weekly testing. This decision does not reside in the Board of Education or the district. Any directive of this nature would be administered at the state level.
Given that there are more than 500,000 new COVID cases daily, higher than at any other time in the pandemic, why aren't the schools doing everything they can to prevent the spread of this deadly disease among our children? Dawn?
As a district and school community, we have implemented safety measures and protocols to assure the safety of our students and staff. We have followed with due diligence the mandates and requirements set forth by the Department of Health, the Governor, the CDC, and the State Education Department. The guidance from CDC emphasizes implementing layered prevention strategies to protect students, teachers, staff, and visitors. In addition to universal indoor masking, the CDC identifies a combination of social distancing, ventilation, hand washing, and respiratory etiquette, contact tracing in combination with quarantine and isolation, and cleaning and disinfection as important layers of prevention in keeping schools safe. We have kept our schools open and safe for attendance and maintained fluid contact with the Suffolk County Department of Health. During the Omicron surge, the district provided alternative learning opportunities for students at all grade levels and worked individually with families with extenuating circumstances.
Why is the district trying so hard not to allow anyone to quarantine when they are within CDC guidelines? Why would the push to keep bodies in school come before the push for safety? Dawn?
The district follows the CDC and Department of Health guidelines for quarantine and isolation.
Some kids do not properly wear masks in class, and it has to be taught to them to wear proper masking practices, and someone should take rounds to see if everyone is properly masked, as masking can help with stopping the spread. Dawn?
Staff continue to remind students the importance of wearing a mask. While some students do require reminders of how to wear them properly, with reminders, students typically do comply.
When kids play outdoors for recess, if the kids remove their masks, they are in close contact with each other and transmission rates can be high. What plan does the district have in regards to this? Dawn?
Currently, while mask wearing is not required outdoors, monitors and supervising staff continue to remind students to maintain appropriate social distance.
When will the children no longer have to socially distance for indoor recess? Dawn?
The district follows the CDC and Department of Health guidance on social distancing. We will adjust our practice when they do.
What steps are being taken to improve mask compliance with staff? I often see staff with masks below their noses, and in particular, as I drive past the buses each day, see multiple drivers not wearing their masks correctly. Please note, this is typically not teachers, but staff of all kinds at the school, including those with direct contact with children. Cheryl?
Thank you, Ellen. Our administrators and I as superintendent have communicated with our staff about the importance of universal and appropriate masking procedures. This has occurred both through email correspondence and direct correspondence and direct communication with the staff. We recognize the impact of COVID fatigue on all, but we must remain committed and vigilant in our efforts to follow and adhere to all safety and health protocols.
Why are there no consequences for students who refuse to keep masks on properly? What will you do to change this so that students who refuse to keep others safe cannot continue this behavior? Cheryl?
We are not, as a district, certain as to the factual data that is being used to issue this statement. However, we do appreciate the opportunity to provide information and clarification. There is no doubt that students are struggling with the health and safety protocols, particularly as they relate to appropriate and universal masking. This is not unique to our district. However, when asked and/or reminded to appropriately wear their masks, our students demonstrate respect and compliance. Discipline should always be progressive and implemented in a manner to effect productive and effective learning and change. Students who refuse to wear a mask after being asked to do so, parents are contacted, and if there is no compliance, parents are asked to pick their children up from school.
Right now, New York State requires all school children to provide proof of immunization for numerous diseases, including measles, mumps, polio, chickenpox, etc. Is there a plan to add the COVID vaccine to that list in the near future? Cheryl?
This would be a decision that would be beyond the purview of a local school board and district and would be at the state education and Department of Health level.
Will we continue to follow the state requirements and CDC guidelines in regards to mask wearing in schools? There is a lot of noise from some parents, and I would hope we won't bow to the pressure of the loud minority and risk the health of our children, the faculty, and staff. Cheryl?
Please be assured that our district is committed to following the guidance of the Department of Health, CDC, State Education Department, and Governor.
Will the district follow the CDC recommendation for test to stay? Cheryl?
The district will not be implementing test to stay protocol as we do not have the number of COVID tests needed to sustain this process and this protocol with any kind of fidelity.
Will the school come up with a universal mask break schedule? Cheryl?
No, the district will not be doing that. Our mask breaks are implemented based on developmental and classroom and individual need. We also are very conscious to make certain that we are not exceeding the number of minutes that would identify a student as a close contact. Students requiring extended mask breaks are provided the opportunity outside the immediate classroom environment to assure the safety of all.
Thank you for providing a forum to submit concerns about education in the Three Village School District. I request consideration to change the time classes begin in the morning for students at Ward Melville High School. First period begins at 7:05 and the junior high schools at 7:35 a.m. I have attached links below to studies conducted by the University of Michigan, the Center for Applied Research and Educational Improvement, CARE, and the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. All studies stress the need for adequate sleep, 8 to 10 hours, for teenagers to achieve their potential. Further, all studies describe a biological change to a teenager's body that causes them difficulty to fall asleep early in the evening. Coupling this biological change to sleeping habits with a school district mandated 7:05 a.m. beginning does not provide an adequate window for sleep. I am aware bus schedules, after-school activities, and parents' schedules may be impacted, but balanced short-term disruption against the ongoing benefit to the entire student body warrants meaningful change to the 22-23 school year schedule. I know change on Long Island is immediately met with resistance, but creative ideas for the benefit of the student body should be made despite pushback. Buses swinging through neighborhoods at 6:30 a.m. in the dark don't really make sense. There's a list of 3 websites: the Conservancy, the UOM Health Org, and JCSM organization. The American Academy of Pediatrics has recommended that middle and high schools start at 8:30 a.m. or later to give students the opportunity to get the amount of sleep they need. But most American adolescents start school too early. Why has the district not made this very important change? I would like to hear about where we are regarding the later start time for the high school. We were so far along and so much effort and energy put into regarding this issue, but that obviously came to a halt with the pandemic. I would like to have this issue picked up where we left off. Cheryl?
Thank you. You are most welcome to this individual who wrote this, and we thank you for the feedback. As you may be aware, during the 2019-2020 school year, the district did investigate the issues surrounding start time, and on December 11th of 2019, made a presentation at the Board of Education meeting. In the past decade, there has been a lot of discussion in local and national news about the sleep rhythms of adolescents and the amount of sleep they need to remain healthy, safe, and fully engaged in their learning and school experiences. These discussions, coupled with the predominance of valid and cogent research, have suggested that the early arrival start times at many high schools may contribute to students getting insufficient sleep to feel and perform at their very best. The 2019 presentation addressed issues related to the importance of sleep hygiene, impact on adolescent health to include a range of conditions that affect physical and mental well-being, correlation to improved academic performance and engagement, and association with vehicular safety. The district committee commissioned by the Board of Education to investigate the possibility of a later start time was placed on hiatus as a result of the pandemic. It is also important to note that there is a budgetary cost associated with implementing a later start time. However, we will discuss with the board the reinstatement of this committee to further investigate a change in start time.
Thank you for hosting the community forum. We would truly appreciate a response to our latest email. Thank you. To the Three Village Board of Education and Superintendent Cheryl Pedicic, I thank you for your response to our request. However, the reason you gave does not apply to what we asked for. You stated that you will not be writing a letter for or against the COVID-19 vaccine mandate because it is a public health issue and you are not qualified to give your opinion. There must have been a misunderstanding. Our request didn't require you to write a letter stating the district is for or against the mandate. It also did not call for your medical knowledge or opinions. We simply asked you to write a letter stating if there is a COVID-19 vaccine mandate, there are many families in your district that will pull their children out of school. That does not require a side medical input or opinion. Additionally, our second request was that you inform the parents and guardians of Three Village School District that if Bill A08378 passes during this legislative session, it would require their children to be vaccinated to attend school. I am certain there are many families that are unaware, and it is imperative that a district does whatever in their power to keep their residents informed. A sample letter is attached for your convenience. Myself and the 204 families that signed the petition with these requests of you, thank you in advance for your action regarding this matter. Cheryl?
Yes, the Board of Education did discuss this, and it is my understanding and to my knowledge, the Board of Education did respond in writing to this request via our district clerk, and in sum and substance stated, the communication, the district will not be writing a letter to lawmakers pleading a case for or against a possible mandate, the reason being that this is a medical and public health issue upon which they are not qualified to offer an opinion. That being said, the district fully supports the right of every parent and guardian to express what they feel is best for their child and encourages parents, guardians to channel that communication not only to us, but to Albany, where it is likely to be more meaningful.
Thank you. At the last Board of Education meeting, you stated that the mask mandate is not up to the county or the Board of Education. Instead, it is up to the state. Can you provide us with the law that proves that information to be correct? Bruce Blakeman has not received any legal backlash against his county order. Instead, threats of removing state funding for schools who don't implement this mandate were stated by Governor Hochul. Initially, she said it would be up to the counties. Is there a law that changed that? When will parents decide when the masks come off? The amount of anxiety these kids are getting due to wearing them is insane. Cheryl?
As I'm sure everybody is aware, much has happened since the submission of these questions. And just to reference the letter, my letter that was sent to the community yesterday. On Monday, January 24th, a mandate ordering students and staff to wear masks in schools was declared as unconstitutional and unenforceable. Yesterday, January 25th, the New York State filed an appeal to last night's, to the previous Monday's ruling by the Nassau County Supreme Court judge stating that the Department of Health exceeded its authority regarding school mask regulations. The Appellate Division, Second Department, granted an application by the Department of Health and the Governor's office staying the decision of the Supreme Court judge pending further proceedings. Following that decision, the Commissioner of Education, Betty Rosa, issued a statement to school districts advising the Appellate Division decision and stating that as a result of this decision, the mask mandate would remain in effect for schools across the state. As such, masks will be required for all students and staff moving forward until further notice. We recognize, of course, the frustration and confusion this issue has caused for our parents, our staff, our students throughout the community. We will continue to keep our community updated regarding the legal appeal process as the situation develops. As many of you know, on Friday, the appellate court is meeting again. My understanding, it is happening at 10 o'clock in the morning. We do acknowledge and are very sympathetic to the significant impact that the pandemic has had on our students, our staff, and our families. We also know that the health and safety protocols are essential to keeping our schools safe and open. The district is invested in providing emotional support to our students and has dedicated considerable effort to SEL and counseling support.
I want to know the school stance on the vaccine mandate. Cheryl?
The Three Village Central School District does not have a stance on the vaccine mandate, as we rely on medical and health professionals to make these public health decisions.
Will you be mandating the COVID-19 vaccination for children?
This decision does not reside within the purview of our local school board or district and would be made at the state level.
Hello, all. My main question is, will you ever mandate the vaccine for children? I am not, as a parent, vaccinating my daughter with the COVID vaccine. I agree it works for some and am in no way against it for others. However, it doesn't work for my family. I have 4 to 5 friends who will be moving out of the Arrowhead Murphy alone if this school district decides to go against choice, and this saddens me. I can't just get up and move like south, unfortunately, like some can. I will be forced to homeschool my daughter at that point, which I do not think will benefit either of us. I hate thinking that I might have to make a decision like this. Thank you. There has been recent discussion by Governor Hochul that she plans to implement the vaccine mandate for school-age children in the fall of 2022. If the governor moves forward with this plan, will the district push back on the mandates or will you comply? As this is not an approved vaccine that has followed the proper FDA approval process, many parents are concerned. What will be the district's position? Cheryl?
The board has not met to discuss this particular issue. However, as a public school district that is under the direction and regulation of the governor, the state education department, and New York State Department of Health, the district would have an obligation and responsibility to follow any public health laws with regard to immunizations for school-aged children. This was the case when religious exemptions for vaccinations were no longer permissible.
In November, I shared with you a CDC study measuring 90,000 Georgia elementary age students. It found, quote, that a masking requirement of students failed to show independent benefit, end quote, unquote. I specifically asked, quote, if any of the administrators or board members might be aware another large CDC-type study that contradicts these findings, unquote. I was assured that there will be a search for more recent data that might dispute the CDC research. Since then, have you discovered any similar large-scale studies that contradict Georgia's findings? Cheryl?
No, the district has not found any similar large-scale studies that contradict the findings of the Georgia study. We did share the article with our chief medical officer, and I will share his response with you. Yes, the medical community is aware that some of the public health recommendations are expert opinion rather than explicitly definitively proven by empirical evidence. That's not to say they aren't based on science, but rather, given the dearth of prospective controlled clinical traits on very large numbers of students, we have to trust the experience and expertise of our public health officers and clinical epidemiologists. As this author intimates, studies are all too often too small to be empowered to be able to demonstrate a statistically significant differential. When we are talking about millions of students, one would need, in order of magnitude, more subjects to be able to discern a subtle yet clinically meaningful difference. Regardless of whether or not there has since been another large CDC-type study that contradicts these findings, kindly be assured that we will continue to adhere to the guidance of the experts of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, even when that guidance may be supported by less than crystal clear definitive proof.
Since the peak of the COVID wave is expected for the end of January, would it be possible to give the students the option to work remotely, at least for a couple of weeks? Kevin?
We cannot offer a remote option at the present time.
The district should take a proactive rather than reactive approach to the current spread of COVID. Now that test kits have been distributed, the district should offer more remote instruction for 1 week to allow isolation and testing before return on a voluntary basis. Kevin?
Further studies would need to be conducted on whether isolation periods work. For example, if a family takes a vacation during the period and risks exposure, does it defeat the purpose of the isolation period?
If a child has to stay home due to a positive COVID test or while awaiting a negative result, is it possible for them to still participate in their regular class via Zoom using their Chromebook? The teacher can keep a Chromebook open on their desk so the remote students can see and hear what's happening and not get behind in their work. Kevin?
We implemented this for January of this, right now. We're in the process of this with elementary students. They enter the COVID quarantine class or be grouped with other students across the district with a tutor. Secondary students are permitted to live stream into their classes.
If the worst case scenario happens and the school has to go back to remote learning, is there a plan in place to allow live learning via Zoom instead of the previous method of uploading assignments to Google Classroom? Uploading any paperwork or materials the students need to Google Classroom is a good idea, but it would be enormously helpful for the students to still be taught live via streaming during their ordinary class hours. This would allow them to keep their usual schedule and to be able to interact with their teachers and peers instead of being completely isolated. Kevin?
We would have to discuss any further planning if this were ever to come to some fruition, but the district could pivot to a completely remote setting. Students in both levels would follow their schedules, and work would be provided via Google Classroom, as we did last year.
The directive that students may not have remote access without an order from the Board of Health ensures that kids will come to school exposed rather than risk losing days of education time that they can't make up. Getting a Board of Health order, even if even possible, can take days to weeks. In our case, contract tracing never called and never sent a letter. Kevin?
As we previously stated, for this month, we suspended the need for the order with students.
Why is the district trying so hard not to allow anyone to quarantine when they're within CDC guidelines? Why would the push to keep bodies in school come from, I think we answered this. Why would the push to keep bodies in school come from the push for safety? That was answered.
The district does not quarantine anyone. The Department of Health determines the quarantine parameters.
We asked this question too. So that concludes the topics in this category. We are moving on to special education. Are there any staff members that are certified in programs such as Orton Gillingham or Wilson Reading Program? Not just trained, but certified. Dawn?
Although not a requirement for teacher certification by the New York State Education Department, some of our special educators have expanded their repertoire of strategies used in teaching literacy and obtained certification in multisensory reading programs such as Orton Gillingham or the Wilson Reading Program.
Does the district have any prompt therapists? Dawn?
Yes, there are a number of speech pathologists who have received some elements of prompt training. Prompt training is not a requirement for speech pathologists. However, there are some students who benefit from these strategies to facilitate sound productions or to integrate motor production in a functional treatment plan.
Do you have programs that work with Stony Brook University for students with disabilities, all grades? Dawn?
We do. Some of our high school students have engaged in unique transitional programming through work-based learning experiences with a variety of departments at Stony Brook University. And in addition, we work cooperatively with Dr. Matthew Lerner at the Social Competence and Treatment Lab at Stony Brook. Dr. Lerner has invited our support on a couple of research projects that he is conducting for children with autism spectrum disorders. One program is called Investigating Social Patterns in Youth, or I-SPY, which is a study to learn more about the role that different factors play in real-world social functioning. Another research project is the Sense Theater Project. This Sense project focuses on assessing and improving interventions to improve social competence among adolescents with autism. It involves in-person intervention through group social interactions. We have hosted theater weekly practices and performances in the auditorium at Setauket Elementary School for a few years.
Does the district have and promote buddy social clubs for students with disabilities, all grades? Dawn?
Currently, there is a Stand Together Buddies Club at Ward Melville, which provides an opportunity for students to work together through recreational activities and projects. In previous years, there have been similar buddy clubs at Jelinas and Murphy. Unfortunately, those were halted due to COVID. Hopefully, they will be re-implemented when COVID is over.
Has any thought been put into creating summer programs for students who need extra supports but do not qualify for ESY programs? Kevin?
Free Village has run programs over the summer for students in all categories for many years. It runs programs for students beyond ESY programs in the areas of summer reading for kindergarten through second grade, summer math, AIS for students attending grades 1 through 6, summer enrichment, and the Jumpstart program for E&L students.
We are now moving to the next topic, DEI, or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Will you be implementing critical race theory into our schools? Paul?
Thank you, Alan. Quite simply, no. Critical race theory is part of what might be taught to law school students and has no place in our K-12 curriculum. As I stated earlier, teaching issues of race through the lens of history and social studies classes does not come with blame or shame. It comes with context and conversations about how, over time, so many Americans have worked to promote equity and equality for so many groups that have been historically marginalized. Furthermore, our district's goals will not only promote ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but will promote opportunities for civics and community engagement so that all students will be college, career, and citizenship ready by the time they graduate from Ward Melville High School.
What training is done for staff? How are teachers incorporating this education for the students? Paul?
Professional development and growth opportunities for our staff members has always been a priority for the Three Village School District. While much of the professional development in recent years has focused on content, social and emotional learning regarding students during this global pandemic, and of course, instructional technology in our classroom and school, we have added a professional development subcommittee to our larger Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. This group consists of central office administrators, building-level leaders, teachers, and support staff who have committed their work to creating professional development opportunities for teachers and staff with two goals in mind. First, building teaching and learning opportunities for teachers and students as they continue to build classroom and school communities that promote kindness, compassion, and empathy so that all students are learning in environments that prioritize dignity and respect. Second, building classroom and school-wide opportunities to focus on civic engagement and community service and participation so that all students are prepared to take on their important roles as members of a global society, where any student who chooses to can make a difference in their world and the world of others.
What can I do to support the staff and children? Paul?
Well, as parents and members of this community, each of us has a responsibility to support our work beyond the classroom and school walls. The best way we as community members can support this important work is by being involved and communicating. As our student community members engage in volunteerism and civic activism, support them. Communicate with the schools if you know of events that promote things that we should value and embrace, those that support our vision of kindness, compassion, and empathy, recognition of diversity and inclusivity, and those that teach our children about the importance of civic knowledge and participation. So many times, events take place in our community, a community that is so steeped in a rich history and with wonderful values, and our students and schools are largely unaware. We are blessed with amazing students that would embrace so many of these opportunities. Continue to work as a school and community partnership, and as a result, our students' education grows exponentially beyond the physical walls of our school buildings.
The racism and inequality that I have experienced and witnessed to minorities with certain staff should be looked into. I personally do not think they are aware of their unconscious biases. Other parents have brought this up to me and are afraid, as they do not want their children to be retaliated against. I also was afraid to bring this up, as I am not educated on unconscious biases as I am now. Paul?
Alan, let me say this. Please never be afraid to let our district and building administration know if you believe there is an issue of any kind that needs to be addressed. Never would we want a student or staff member to be made to feel uncomfortable. Many times, implicit bias goes unnoticed or unchecked because of not only a lack of understanding, but because of human beings' personal experiences. This question, comments, is not unknown to us, as we have heard from students and alumni during formal meetings and in our recently completed surveys that at times these situations do arise. Much of the work that will help us in addressing these implicit biases is being addressed and will be addressed by the DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committees, and several of their subcommittees. This work takes time, planning, and professional expertise. Again, please make us aware if any situation arises with respect to any words or actions that promote hatred towards any group of people, all inclusive.
Thank you. How can the district gain more courage and actually teach DEI without being discouraged by political forces? Paul?
Thank you. To be clear, there is no formal document that exists that supports a diversity, equity, and inclusion curriculum. I do not at all believe that our district is discouraged by political forces. As the coordinator of district diversity, equity, and inclusion, I am in fact encouraged as we move the largest committee in our district forward with an ever-changing mission and goals that are relevant for all students. I'm also encouraged by the amount of volunteerism that we have on this committee, from administration to teachers and support staff, parents and community members. Most importantly, I hope this community is as encouraged as I am by the amount of students that are asking me to join the district committee week after week. These are students with diverse political ideologies, races, ethnicities, sexualities. Ultimately, it is our children that inspire this work. They are of a different ilk, a different generation, and they do not let their possible political differences get in the way of the work. We, as educators and as a community, should not be teaching them that the other side is wrong. We should be teaching them how to listen and understand people's diverse experiences and points of view.
When will the school be as vigilant about rampant racist language and comments as it is about vaping and dress codes? Paul?
The Three-Village School District takes all reports of racist language and comments very seriously. In fact, if you refer to the Board of Education policy number 5300, subsection 25, letter H in the Student Code of Conduct, district policy specifically refers to the actionable consequences of racial/religious, ethnic comments and/or behaviors. Specifically, an automatic 5-day principal suspension will be the consequence for such inappropriate behavior. This consequence is consistent with the consequence for vaping in school. The consequences for racist language and comments are far greater than as identified for a violation of the dress code, which states that it could include an out-of-school suspension. Most importantly, I would encourage any student that has either been a victim of this behavior or has heard it directly aimed at another individual to bring it to the attention of the Dean of Students or building administrator.
When will the surveys be reported on, and what are the possible actions that will be taken as a result? Paul?
Thank you. Our survey subcommittee of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, who were a driving force in creating this survey, will be meeting over the coming weeks and months to analyze and evaluate the data that came from the 3 surveys. There is a tremendous amount of data that could be yielded from these surveys. The work of the committee, which is composed of parents, teachers, mental health staff members, school and central office administrators, will be presented when the data has been synthesized and will be reported in a public session to our Board of Education and community. The results will be used to help us revise and reinvent our school and district-wide DEI goals. One thing I know for sure is that no matter what the results of the survey, our unwavering commitment to the mission of the committee will stand. Our mission is to foster inclusivity, value diversity, and promote equity in our school community. As a district, we are committed to addressing and dismantling discriminatory treatment, unfair policies, and biased practices based on race, gender, religion, ability, and/or sexuality. We will cultivate knowledge, celebrate and honor the cultural differences of our staff, students, parents, and community members. We do this with respect, self-awareness, authentic engagement, and a willingness to learn from one another. Thank you.
Thank you. What conversations are being had about psychological safety? I am a PEAS facilitator. Erin?
PPS team, which includes social workers, psychologists, and guidance counselors, meet regularly to plan and discuss salient student mental health concerns in each building district-wide. In the spring of 2020, the district convened a subcommittee of the district's governance task force focusing on mental health. The return to school plan included a robust SEL initiative geared toward addressing COVID-related psychological issues, including ensuring that students felt and feel safe in school. This plan has been in place for the past year and a half, and it is evaluated regularly. In addition, the district, using allocations from the American Rescue Plan, chose to add an additional full-time social worker in our elementary schools to support mental health and SEL initiatives. The PPS staff do regular classroom push-in lessons, run small group counseling sessions, and see students individually who require a more intensive amount of school support. The mental health team also created supports for every student and their parents who are returning this September from remote schooling. As stated previously, the social work team did a presentation to the Board of Education in December outlining their SEL initiatives, and that's posted to the district's YouTube channel.
Thank you. We're going to move on to another category, transportation. Hi. Can the number of buses be consolidated based upon usage, or does the school have to assume buses will be at full capacity when contracting services? Jeff?
We do not schedule our buses assuming full capacity. We have a good idea of how many of our students will be riding a bus, and we schedule accordingly. Of course, there has to be some flexibility built in, because even students who normally do not ride the bus, whether it's because their parents drive them or someone else drives them, may occasionally ride the bus. So there needs to be some flexibility, but we don't schedule assuming every child will ride the bus every single day. And we have consolidated in the past. In 2010, we changed our starting times a little bit to create another tier of school buses, and we were able to reduce the number of buses that we contract out by 15, which saved, at the time, it was about $1.2 million a year. That dollar amount is now over $1.5 million a year, and we save that money every year. In fact, we were one of only 10 districts in New York State that was awarded a School District Management Efficiency Award for doing that. And the award was actually, we got $747,000 from New York State for that, not for any particular purpose. It was paid out $249,000 a year for each of 3 years, and we used that money to offset taxes in those years. And we would continue to do that as our enrollment numbers change. We analyze each year if we can consolidate and reduce one bus or two buses or whatever. We would absolutely do that. If we can do that, still provide an efficient transportation system. If we can save money, we'd be glad to do it.
A lot of buses, especially at the middle school and high school levels, even pre-COVID, were hardly at capacity. I dare say they don't even seem half full. Can routes be consolidated and buses eliminated based on usage? I think you partially answered.
It's kind of along what I was saying, but what really governs or drives how many buses we need to contract out is what is the most number of buses that we need at any one time during a day. So our bus contract does not say, oh, we're contracting for X number of buses. It's how much per bus based on how many hours a day we use the bus, that kind of thing. But the contract doesn't say how many buses we have to contract for. That's up to us. So what we look at is, so right now we have 47 buses that come to Ward Melville each morning. So right off the bat, we need 47 buses. We certainly don't need 47 buses in the afternoon for Ward Melville to take kids home. A lot more students ride the bus in the morning, especially from Ward Melville, in the morning than they do in the afternoon going home because of after-school activities and whatnot. So we need those number of buses. There's always a couple of extras that we need for some of the longer routes, because most of our buses will do 4 routes, but not all of them can. So the cost for the bus is that we have a bus, whether it's a 5-hour bus or a 6-hour bus, it's not a whole lot of difference in cost. So since we have the number of buses anyway, we try to take full advantage of them since we have them. So sometimes a bus might only be half full or a quarter full, but it doesn't mean we don't need the bus at another time during the day. It doesn't save us any money to, these 10 buses just go sit in the parking lot somewhere and don't do anything, and if we need the bus at another time during the day, we're still paying for it. So anytime we can know, as I mentioned before, if we can reduce the number of buses, we will. But just because you see some buses that are half or less than half full, it doesn't mean it can be eliminated, especially in a district our size, which is 22.5 square miles. We have some students that live in areas where there might be one student at a bus stop, and then a half a mile down the road, another student, and then a half a mile down the road, another student. So the time it takes, especially take Ward Melville, for example, the furthest area of the district from Ward Melville is also the least densely populated area. So in order to make the most efficient route, there might be fewer students on a bus from those areas of the district than other areas where it might stop. At one stop, 10 or 12 or 15 students might get on board.
Makes sense. Can the late bus times at the middle school and high school be changed to times when more students would need them? For example, at Ward Melville, clubs end around 2:45, 3, but the next bus is 4:10, more than an hour wait. Then sports end around 4:30, 5, but the next bus is 5:45, about an hour wait. Jeff?
It would be difficult to have an earlier late bus than 4:10 because all of our buses at that time are still bringing students home from our 3 late elementary schools, Arrowhead, Mountain, and Setauket. If that changes in the future, that we can use a couple of fewer buses, and we can get buses here earlier than 4:10, we'd be glad to do that, absolutely. And then by the time they do their routes and then get back again, that's why we use 5:45. Some sports are done by 4:30 or 5, but some aren't. So it would require a whole nother layer of late buses in order to put another time in there. That's why we've kept it at 5:45, because pretty much all sports are done by 5:30 usually, even though some are done earlier, but some go on later. But that too, that can change as time goes on, and we would every year we look at that and see what would be the best use of times for our late buses.
Pickups at the high school are crazy around 5 p.m., partially because the bus schedule isn't practical, too long a wait, kids get home too late. Not sure what the question is.
Same kind of thing. If we could do an earlier late bus than that, we could, but not all sports are done by 5 o'clock.
Our next category is sports and other extracurricular activities. Sounds like Jeopardy! Since it is so important to make community connections and learn to network early in your career, I would love for Ward Melville High School to contact alumni each year to come back and discuss career choices and success stories. It would be even better to assign an alum to each student like a big brother, big sister type of program. It could even extend to include a senior mentor, a ninth grader. I know that the club Women's Forum was so successful connecting Ward Melville High School female students to Arrowhead Elementary 6th grade girls twice a month. This type of program should expand. Erin?
Thank you. Yes, the Women's Forum is an outstanding club run by Diana Gott at Ward Melville. Thank you for your suggestion. We think this is an excellent idea. As you may be aware, for many years we've had graduates return to discuss their college experiences with our high school students. The idea of a big brother, big sister would be more involved and may not logistically be able to be implemented in a manner that would allow for all students to participate. However, it is definitely worth exploring the viability of such a program, even if it's on a smaller scale and has much potential to positively impact student connections and establish valuable partnerships.
Would love the school to have some sports that are for fun and health, social well-being, just 2 or 3 times a week, such as tennis, volleyball, swimming, soccer, especially in the winter. Erin?
So currently, our fitness center is open to all students after school at Ward Melville from 1:45 to 2:45 p.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. Students are able to use treadmills, exercise bikes, and other cardio equipment, free weights, and other various strength training machines. It is staffed and supervised by one of our physical education teachers. Prior to COVID, we did have open gym days for students to play basketball from 1:45 to 2:45 p.m. The department is looking, the physical education department is looking into bringing these open gym times back, plus adding some other intramural activities such as volleyball, pickleball, badminton, tennis, etc. We know and understand how important physical activities are for our students, and it would be beneficial to all our students, not just student athletes, to have access to physical activities and sports throughout the year.
Thank you. Moving on to the next category, facilities. Can tents and picnic tables be put outside to promote more outside eating at lunch? Jeff?
We do have picnic tables here at Ward Melville outside for students to eat. The elementary schools, it doesn't work so well for them to eat lunch outside. Same with Jolinas and Murphy. However, if we do have a number of classroom teachers that take classes outside in the warmer weather and have been doing that since this year and last year. We will continue to do that. I'm not so sure about eating lunch outside, but it's something that we could certainly keep in mind as the weather gets warmer.
What properties and land, other than the ones that schools are housed in, does Three Village own, and what are they being used for at the moment? Jeff?
Other than the Nichols Road building, which we discussed previously, which houses the teacher center, it also houses the non-public school textbook distribution, and our security patrol is based out of that building. That's the Nichols Road building. The only other property that we own that is not being used right now is an 18-acre vacant lot off of Hawkins Road, the southern end of the district. We've had some discussions over the years about possible uses for that. In fact, we started our Board of Education Facilities Committee had started talking about that right before COVID hit, and that COVID kind of put an end to that discussion for now. But we have that piece of property that it would be nice to be able to do something with that sometime soon.
Would a consolidation of activities into 1 or 2 buildings instead of 6 outside of the normal school day save money in the budget, be practical or efficient? For example, during the summer, with a little planning, could these happen at Ward Melville High School only or fewer places? Summer rec, half-day Mount, summer rec, full-day mini, summer travel, Ward Melville, summer special ed, Arrowhead, summer credit recovery, North Country, summer music, BAM at Ward Melville, summer theater, TV Music Theater Company, Murphy, summer driver's ed, Ward Melville. Jeff?
I don't think consolidating them would work. We spread them out intentionally because of the number of students involved, especially for the 2 recreation programs, the half-day and full-day. They take up pretty much, each one of them takes up pretty much the whole school that they're at. The summer special education program, or what we call the ESY, Extended School Year program at Arrowhead. Arrowhead is suited perfectly for that program, and it's been there for years and years, and it just works well. The credit recovery at North Country, it doesn't take up a lot of room. There wouldn't be any benefit to moving it somewhere. It could be somewhere else, but there's no real, there wouldn't be no benefit to it. What we have done over the years is occasionally we have construction projects going on in 1 or 2 or more of the buildings, and we do have to consolidate some of those programs, and it doesn't help anything. It makes things a lot more difficult. There was no cost savings to consolidating either. Our buildings are open throughout the summer. School buildings are, for our custodial and maintenance staff, are extremely busy times. There's a lot of work that we can only do during the summer when regular school is closed. So there's not any cost to us to open a building for a program, whether it's travel camp is based out of here, but they're not even here. They really just base it out of here. The two the music theater program and the music program, the one that's at Murphy, the one program is sometimes here, sometimes at Jelena's. Those are both outside groups and pay for facilities use.
We're going to move on to child nutrition. If kids are vegan, vegetarian, and would like to take part in the school lunch program, the options for them are bagel. Why not provide more food choices? Jeff?
Well, we are looking into providing more options, and our child nutrition department would welcome suggestions. Anybody that I think has, whether it's allergies or vegan or vegetarian options, our director of child nutrition, Gene Ecker, or our head cook, who's based out of Woodmobile High School, Jessica Dede, would be happy to discuss with you and have and take any suggestions. But as far as vegetarian type options, students never have to take the meat with the meal. So on Burger Day, there are veggie burgers offered. On Taco Day, black beans are offered, and there's peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They can also substitute any kind of beans that we have for students that do not eat dairy. String cheese or yogurt may be substituted for the meat of the day. And again, they would absolutely welcome suggestions.
Why are there very few allergen-friendly options for lunch? Are we really trying to say that it's healthy for a 6-year-old to be able to buy an ice cream and chips every day? That is not teaching them about a balanced diet. There should be real food available for them to buy snacks. One standard ice pop is almost the total daily recommended allowance of sugar. Jeff?
Parents of students with medically documented food allergies should contact the child nutrition department if they need specialized meals for their children. The main meal of the day is peanut and tree nut safe. For any other food allergies, parents should work with the child nutrition department if there's real specific needs. The cafeteria program does offer snack options such as fresh fruit, vegetables, string cheese, yogurt, granola bars, etc. At the junior high school and high school, we offer yogurt and fruit smoothies, yogurt parfait, along with many other a la carte options. Each meal component can be purchased a la carte, including hot meal, sandwiches, vegetables, fruit, and milk. Items that are snack type of foods offered for sale in the cafeterias follow the USDA Smart Snacks in Schools guidelines. These products are not the same as the items for sale in the stores. Even the ice cream is made specially for child nutrition programs, and they have whole grain cones, low fat, less sugar, etc. Chips are baked and are low sodium, low fat, and lower calories in each package. Even the cookies are whole grain and reduced sodium, low fat, and less sugar.
Vegetarian options? No beef option on beef days. That are hot meals, not 2 slices of bread and cheese.
We do, as I mentioned, we do offer veggie burgers on Burger Day and beans on Taco Day in replacement of the beef. And I know they are looking at additional options, and as I mentioned, would welcome suggestions.
Are seconds available? At times, my kids are still hungry.
Yes, second portions of the entrees are available. At the elementary school, the students should indicate extra entree on their order sheet, and students may always have an extra portion of vegetable or fruit at no cost if they're still hungry.
Childhood and adolescent years are critical times to foster healthy eating habits. The school food environment plays an important part in children's consumption patterns. Establishing good nutrition early on can lead to healthy lifestyle habits and lower the risk of chronic disease. Foods are not available for students in Three Village in the cafeteria during lunch sessions, but also in classrooms during snack times in elementary schools and during class celebrations. The nutritional quality of these foods should meet the needs of children and shape healthy choices. My first question relates to the food served in the cafeteria. The National School Lunch Programs has proposed targets to reduce sodium in school meals to less than or equal to 640 milligrams, grades K through 5, 710 milligrams, grades 6 through 8, and 740 milligrams, grades 9 through 12. The current meals in the elementary schools seem to provide an average of 941 milligrams of sodium, higher than the current target of 935 milligrams. How does the district plan to meet the upcoming guidelines for sodium? Then there's a website cited, schoolnutrition.org. This question relates to food in the classroom. The district student wellness policy indicates that food offered to students during classroom celebrations should meet the standards for competitive food and beverages. Example, the Smart Snacks in School rules. These guidelines indicate competitive food should contain less than equal to 35% weight from total sugars. Again, the School Nutrition Org site is indicated. My children had winter holiday celebrations in December and came home with a bag full of sweets and candy. When parents were allowed in for school celebrations in the elementary school, I observed many sweets and juices offered, with very few options for fruits and vegetables. These celebrations did not seem to follow the student wellness policy, which states, quote, celebrations and events, the districts will promote the use of food and beverage items that meet the standards for competitive foods, promote non-food activities, and discourage foods and beverages which do not meet the standards at celebrations. How can classrooms better abide by these guidelines? Jeff?
Well, the first part, manufacturers of foods for child nutrition programs across the country are working on their recipes to lower the sodium in foods that they provide to schools. As a district, we're looking into different brands of products and their nutritional quality to bring in items that will work within the regulations. We are also revising our in-house recipes of the foods we cook from scratch. And this is something that, as I mentioned, our Director of Child Nutrition and our head cook, who's based at the high school here, are looking into ways to reduce sodium in all of our meals. The second part of the question about foods used in celebrations in classrooms, they should be following the student wellness policy. We will remind the building principals to speak with their faculty and try to ensure that wellness policy is followed in the classrooms.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the last category for this evening, the other category. Can the district post and circulate the student wellness policy on the district's website? Kevin?
The wellness policy can be found on the district website, as all the policies can be found on the district website under the Board of Education policies page. The two specific policies are policy number 5405, student wellness, and policy 5405-R, wellness regulations on nutrition and physical activity.
In the district's wellness committee, is the district wellness committee active? There are no meeting notes, goals, minutes, or information posted on the district's website for the 21-22 school year. Kevin?
Yes, the Wellness Committee is active. The information for meetings is posted on the website. However, we are in the process of changing the website to be more user-friendly.
Since Mr. Scanlon will be taking over as superintendent next year, what is his vision on how he sees the district moving forward in the future? Kevin?
It is my honor that I've been selected to continue as on in the district as the superintendent of schools next year. But I want to state very clearly that if it wasn't for the 38 years of dedication and devotion to this district that Mrs. Pedicic has shown, we wouldn't be in the position we are today in navigating through this crisis. So we are very lucky to have her. She is our superintendent of schools. I will assume the role on July 6th of this year. At that time, I will begin discussions with the Board of Education about the future. I plan to work with all stakeholders to continue to emphasize our successes and address our needs.
Thank you. When will the start time committee be active again? Kevin?
The committee will reactivate in the future under board directive.
Given the overwhelming empirical evidence that supports it, when will the school consider a later start time?
Discussion of this topic will occur when the start time committee reconvenes.
Please share if there's any discussion underway regarding school start times. Pre-COVID, this was a topic I understand was being explored, and I was curious if this was going to be revisited. You answered that. What consideration has been given to moving ninth graders, freshmen, to the high school? Kevin?
Any proposal for such a move would need to take place through Board of Education directive and a district-wide committee at some point.
And how can the community stakeholders weigh in on this idea?
If the board decides to convene a committee, all stakeholders will be involved with that decision process.
What is involved in doing a demographic study on this subject, Kevin?
So demographic studies have been conducted in this district prior. The two last studies, just to let you know, were pretty much inaccurate in what they predicted what we were going to be in size. So analysis of our current demographics and trends that are continuing should be considered as we move forward with any future discussions of changes in the district.
Given the decreased enrollment for the foreseeable 10 years, there appears to be space. Wouldn't this change reduce budgets while simultaneously enhancing student experiences? More elective choices for ninth grade, more club choices for ninth grade, streamlined special education, math labs, etc. Allow club participation for ninth grade athletes, facilitate JV and varsity sports, eliminate need for shuttle buses, eliminate 10th, 11th grade wait time for sports. Kevin, Jeff?
This is a multiple-part question that has, I feel like I'm back in school again with one question with 17 parts, so we're going to try to address each one as we go through. I'm not sure exactly whether or not we're looking at a decreased enrollment for the next 10 years or not, and I don't know if we can predict out that far. Our enrollment last year was 5,603 students on October 30th of 2020. That was our Beds Day. And it was 5,631 on October 29th of this year, also our Beds Day. It was predicted that enrollment was going to be down by 200 students this year to 5,403. And for this year, we're currently at 5,651. Although not a large increase, it's significant to note. Perhaps it's an anomaly, but we will still have to track what's going on. Electives for all grade levels are presented each year for consideration. Several are approved. However, offering of more courses does not make the secondary schedule easier. Too many offerings can dilute and complicate a master schedule that may prevent students from taking some electives, since some of the electives may not be offered for only one period or for one semester, depending on enrollment. Clubs are also considered every year. Proposals are brought forward to the building principals in every location, and we consider those as we move forward. I'm not exactly sure what people mean by streamlining the special education process. In my experience in 31 years, the special education program here is second to none. Special education programs are driven by IEPs that are federal and state laws that must be adhered to when we're making adjustments. Ninth grade athletes can participate in clubs now. I understand that sometimes it conflicts with some of the sports they're in. It also depends on what season they're playing some of the sports. So we'll have to look at that and perhaps look at the plan with where ninth grade will be in the future. I'm not sure what facilitate JV and varsity sports means. I don't know what that, so whoever wrote this in, be happy to contact myself or Mr. Finnerty. We'll be happy to have that conversation with you. We do have both of those levels available now in almost all of our sports. Having the ninth grade at the high school would eliminate the need for a shuttle bus, obviously, so we wouldn't have to be bringing students back and forth from the two junior high schools to Ward Melville. And I would defer to Mr. Finnerty and Mr. Carlson on the wait time piece. That's not in my purview.
The way the question is worded, it seems to me like the question revolves around moving ninth grade to the high school when things like more elective choices. With declining, the question says declining enrollment, creating more space at Ward Melville, and then it goes on to say about the electives and clubs and sports for ninth graders. So I assume the question is talking about by moving ninth grade here. So well, that certainly could be possible, as Mrs. Scanlon mentioned. It requires district-wide committees charged by the Board of Education to those committees. Lots of discussion before that would happen. But certainly some of those things could, if that happened, especially the need for shuttle buses, club participation, those kind of things. But going back to the question itself, where it says, wouldn't this change reduce budgets while simultaneously enhancing student experiences by more elective choices? Well, actually, what the decline in enrollment has done for us in the last, let's say, 10 years is allowed us to have more electives. all kinds of things, partly because we have the space now. We have classrooms open where we can have more and more and more electives, more sections, and just take Ward Melville, for example, more and more sections operating at the same time because we do have some space, but those cost money. So what we've done is with the decline in enrollment, as I had mentioned earlier, we have the decline in enrollment has allowed us to lower class size at the elementary schools, but also increase the number of electives that we offer at the secondary schools.
Thank you. The teachers and administrators at Mount are doing an awesome job. In my opinion, Setauket School has done a phenomenal job carrying us through this pandemic. What can we do to support this school better? The teachers are amazing. This is a great first step in maintaining an open dialogue with parents to benefit our students. I'd like to suggest we do more of this or something similar. That is ongoing so that we can continue to improve. I'd also like to see meaningful comments or suggestions from teachers or administrators on what can be improved with the support of the community. If there's something not right or not in the best interest of our students that the district is forced to comply with, etc., parents should be made aware so that we can unite and effect change. No one should fear speaking out. Excuse me. We need to maintain local control of education. Thank you. Cheryl?
Well, we really appreciate the feedback, and we certainly will seek input from our teachers and administration, and we value and understand and appreciate the support and input of our school community. The importance of a facilitative school-community partnership can never be overstated. We agree that everyone should feel empowered to speak out on issues that are of concern and relevance to our school district, and regardless of whether there is agreement, all voices must be heard and acknowledged. And we thank everybody for their support here this evening, and we hope that we'll have more opportunity in the future for these dialogues. Thank you.
And that was our last question and response. That concludes this evening's event. Thank you all for coming out this evening or listening in from the warmth of your own homes. And thank you to those of you that submitted questions, and also thanks to all those people who helped supported the technology here tonight. Thank you. Have a good evening and stay safe.